Hello, Jonathan here from the PE Tutor. Welcome to today's lesson in the AQA A-Level PE course. This is week one, lesson one, and today we're going to be focusing on the cardiovascular system and the learning objectives which you can see on the screen there. We're going to be looking at the impact of physical activity on health and fitness, how hormones, the neural pathways and the chemicals inside our body regulate and help us respond to exercise. We're going to look at the role of receptors and how important they are in actually ensuring that our cardiovascular system responds to exercise appropriately. Then we're going to move on to oxygen transport, how we actually deliver that essential gas around the body to ensure that we can sustain exercise. And then Starling's law and Venus return before finally finishing off with something called the cardiovascular drift, as well as our arterial venous O2 difference. So, to start with, the impact of physical activity in sport on health. Now, we start off here with the definition of health, which is a complete state of physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being. It's not just a case of not being sick or not being ill. It's this all-round holistic approach to health. So our physical, our psyche, and our social well-being is all tip-top condition, and nothing is detracting from it. So, how does it help? Well, if we start off with emotional, when we exercise, we actually release something called endorphins into our brain. These are the feel-good chemicals inside of our brain. So, if we are looking to alleviate stress or try and reduce anxiety or trying to put us into a better mood or better frame of mind, activity can actually help us do this. So, emotionally, we feel in a far better frame of mind. We might feel more positive about things. We might feel happier, experiencing more joy. All of these things we get from physical activity or sport. So the more we participate, the better our emotional well-being will be. Secondly, we have the social benefits. Now, social refers to these keywords here, such as leadership or teamwork, friendships, or the ability to communicate well. All of these things are wrapped up in sport. So if you do participate in a team, or perhaps you might coach a team, or go with friends or peers to go and actually kick a ball around in the park, or you go to the gym together, it creates this social environment where you are having to work together to talk to each other to actually get the best out of that sporting situation. So by engaging in these regularly, we do begin to develop these interpersonal skills such as communication, confidence, leadership, teamwork. So sport and activity has a knock-on effect in improving health in this aspect. Thirdly, we have mental. So this refers to someone's cognitive capability, to how well they can apply themselves to a problem, to think about something abstractly, or to apply tactics in a competitive situation. And the more we engage in sport, because sport is essentially problem solving very quickly in a physical way to bring about a certain result. The more we practice this and the more we engage in these tactical problems, we can actually begin to develop our ability to apply these outside of sport. So we start to actually arrive at decisions quicker in day-to-day life, and that might help boost our confidence because we feel far more um, able or capable of responding to everyday tasks. Lastly, we have the physical plane. So obviously, if we are active and we are engaging in sport, we are getting our heart rate up, we're getting our breathing rate up, we are utilizing fat stores that are placed in and around our body. And if we can do all of this, then obviously our cardiorespiratory, our vascular system, our muscular system, they stay nice and healthy because we're constantly replenishing them with fresh nutrients, and the systems or mechanisms are getting frequent use. So it's not as if they're starting to switch off or shut down because they're not being used. So that phrase, use it or lose it, applies here. We need to be using our cardiovascular system on or very regularly if we want the vessels to stay responsive, if we want them to stay unclogged, if we want our muscles to stay um, able to respond to physical stress and strain. So four factors of health: physical, mental, emotional, and social. And activity and sport, it does engage all four to ensure that we do have overall health. So go ahead, make some notes. If you do have your workbook to hand, then you'll find this diagram and you'll be able to write this down. If not, then just write down those keywords, the ones which are bold or underlined. Secondly, We are looking at coronary heart disease. So this is well and truly linked to lack of physical activity. So someone who disengages with sport or chooses not to be active, so they might choose a more sedentary lifestyle. By sedentary, I mean um, not moving, or there's a lack of movement in their day-to-day living. And the result of this is something called CHD, or coronary heart disease. Now, the word coronary refers specifically to the heart itself. So it's the vessels or the tissue that ensures the survival of the heart. And when we exercise, I mean, the heart's a muscle, it's cardiac muscle. So if we want to exercise and we want to increase our heart rate and the force of the contraction to make sure that we are sending as much blood around our body as possible, we need to be supplying the heart with oxygenated blood as well. Now, if we have a poor diet or we don't if we don't send these neural commands to the coronary vessels very frequently, then we actually lose the ability to vasoconstrict and vasodilate them very well. So what this means, if we now move on to the point number two here, if we lose that ability and our blood vessels aren't able to expand and cope with this increase in blood flow or increase in blood pressure, then they could actually start to rupture. They might speak, or they might actually starve the cardiac muscle of oxygen because we can't provide it enough oxygenated blood that it needs. So we might find that our heart rate or our maximum heart rate begins to drop because we can't sustain the amount of, or we can't supply enough oxygen to supply enough energy that the cardiac muscle needs when exercising at high intensity. So it might be that we actually have to take a step back or reduce the amount of intensity or duration of the exercise that we do participate in. Obviously, one step further of this coronary heart disease could be actually a heart attack. So if we do have a vessel which is too narrow, or we've got fatty deposits building up inside of them, and no blood can get through at all, that means no oxygen is going to get through either. And as soon as that cardiac muscle is starved of oxygen completely, it's going to shut down, it's going to stop working, so our heart's going to stop beating. As soon as that stops, suddenly we're unable to get oxygenated blood to the rest of the body, in particularly the brain. So that's where we do start to pass out. We might experience pain in our chest because it's our body's way of telling us that something's wrong and we need to start changing things, or we need to start looking at how we can improve that. So coronary heart disease, it can be not so much avoided, but the risk of it creeping in can be minimized if we participate in physical activity or sport on a regular basis, because it keeps those vessels healthy and used, and it also gets rid of or helps clear out any sort of fatty deposits which might be accumulating inside of those vessels. Cholesterol. This is linked to the previous slide, in that it forms, or it's responsible for a lot of the clogging or the blocking up of blood vessels. Now, cholesterol is a fatty substance, as you can see there. And if you look at this picture, or picture B, it's that yellowy goo or gunk, which resides in some blood vessels. Ideally, we want what we can see in A up here, a nice clear vessel, because we've got a far greater volume, or far greater space for blood to flow through, and nothing's impeding it, nothing's giving it resistance and slowing it down. But in this scenario here, we've got a reduced space, which means less blood is going to be able to flow through at any given point. So our heart might have to work harder to compensate for this increased blood pressure, or we might just not be able to fit as much through. So cholesterol, it comes in two forms. We have HDL, or high density lipoproteins, and low density lipoproteins, or LDLs. Now, low stands for, or if you think about it, low for no. We don't want low density lipoproteins. This is considered the bad cholesterol. Okay, when the fat or the cholesterol combines with proteins inside of our blood, they're being deposited at cells, because we do need cholesterol. It's a common misconception that it's all bad. We don't want cholesterol, avoid it at all costs. We do need it. It's required for essential chemical processes inside of our body, but it's only good in moderation. We don't want too much. So HDL, or high density lipoproteins, these are what deliver enough cholesterol to the body, or to the cells inside of the body. And as soon as the HDL gets there, if there is too much, so there's surplus to use, then the HDL takes the cholesterol away and it delivers it to the liver for breakdown. So if you imagine a stockpile, if we had a pile of cholesterol starting to be building up in a blood vessel, the HDL is what arrives, takes away some of the excess or surplus, and takes it away and delivers it to the liver. Okay, if we have high density lipoproteins, we're actually going to start reducing the amount of buildup we have in our vessels. But LDLs are also working inside the blood at the same time, and LDLs are responsible for adding new deposits to the piles or to the cell. So the LDLs are delivering cholesterol through the vascular system inside of the blood, and the LDLs are delivering cholesterol to the cells in the body. So if we have too much low density lipoproteins, or we have more low density lipoproteins than high density lipoproteins, then obviously we're going to have a net gain of cholesterol, and that's what leads to the buildup. So the foods that we eat, the amount of exercise we conduct or complete, the type of exercise, or the intensity of exercise, and the fuel sources that we use, this all plays in to the levels of LDL and HDL that we have. So the more exercise we complete, the higher our high density lipoproteins go, and the lower the low density lipoproteins go. So to avoid buildup, we should be conducting regular physical activity, which we go into in more detail on this slide here. So LDL, like it says there, leads to the gradual buildup. Okay, so we've got that LDL chap here who's depositing the cholesterol, the fatty deposits at the cells, whereas the HDL, the high density lipoproteins, they're working hard to take the cholesterol away and deliver it to the liver for breakdown. So to avoid this, or to ensure that we always have more HDL than LDL, low fat diets, regular exercise, ideally, which engages the cardiovascular system, and utilizes the fat stores in and around our body. If we can do this just moving on now to the last point, if we can do this and exercise and reduce our fat intake and increase the amount of HDLs and lower the amount of LDLs, then we can start to reduce the risk of strokes, of heart attacks, because we've got blood vessels which are now clearing up. So there's less chance of blood clotting and preventing oxygen from getting to the destination beyond it. So this could be the heart, this could be the brain. As soon as we reduce those fatty deposits, we're increasing the probability of blood getting there and continually supplying the areas with oxygen. So that's health in general, the physical, the emotional, the mental, the social, um, the positive impacts of physical activity on that. Now we're going to move into fitness. Now, fitness, there's a phrase, fit for what? Okay, if someone isn't an elite sports performer, then they won't need to have refined and developed components of fitness, because they don't do it on a daily basis. You need to be fit enough to complete your daily tasks without undue fatigue. So if you are a footballer and you play a couple of times a week, then your fitness levels, or components of fitness, and your bodily systems need to be up to a standard or level that can ensure that you do complete football a couple of times a week without feeling too much fatigue. So just bear that in mind. Fit for. So the heart is a muscle, which we have already spoken about, and just like any other muscle inside of our body, if we place regular strain or stress onto it, then we start to see positive adaptations, also known as hypertrophy. And it's no different with our heart. We have something called cardiac hypertrophy. If we use our muscle frequently and we place strain on it, and we're asking or demanding it to beat faster and harder, over time the cardiac muscle will improve. And you can actually see this on the picture here in the background. On the left-hand side here, this is the cardiac muscle, okay, surrounding the ventricles inside of the heart. And the one on the left is pre-exercise. Let's put that down there. There we go. That is pre-exercise, okay, or pre-training, I should say, because this isn't a short-term effect. This is longer term, and then this is post-exercise or post-training. Okay, and you can see just by looking at the pictures there that we've got far thicker cardiac muscle surrounding these ventricles compared to the left-hand side over here, where it's far thinner, it's far slimmer. It doesn't surround the ventricles as thickly as the heart that we have there on the right, and that's down to training. So if we can increase the size of it, it does become bigger, it becomes stronger, and another word here is more pliable. So combined, if we can make it bigger, okay, so the chambers are larger, we've got the muscle, which can actually contract more forcefully, it can overcome more resistance, and it's stretchier, it's more pliable, then we've got all of these benefits here. So more forceful contractions, we can get more blood leaving the heart at a higher blood pressure, meaning that the oxygen will get to where it needs to be sooner. Less time passes between the heart contracting and the blood reaching its destination. We've also got stroke volume. Now, in a task later on in this lesson, I'm going to ask you to research something called the ejection fraction. I'll give you a bit of a heads up now. The stroke volume is the quantity or the volume of blood that leaves the heart per contraction, or in particular the left ventricle. So the ventricle which, when contracts, it leaves the aorta, and that blood's going to the rest of the body. Now, if I'll use glasses as an example here. If we have a glass, okay, and we fill it 3/4 of the way, and we then empty out some of the water and we leave, 1/4 of it in, then the water that we've actually lost is that volume there, okay, which is about half a glass. There's two ways that we can increase the volume that has just left the glass, and we can either fill the glass up more, okay, and then empty it down to the same level, which was here, or we can fill it up more as well as empty it more as well. Okay, so instead of just having that central part leaving the glass, we can now have the whole thing empty. And that's what we can achieve with a bigger and stronger heart. As blood returns to the heart, more is allowed to enter it because we've got more pliable muscle, it's stretchier, it's more flexible. More blood can enter the heart, and because it's stronger, we can complete more forceful contractions, squeezing more blood out per contraction. So we can actually increase the stroke volume that we achieve. Now, cardiac output, we should know, is heart rate multiplied by stroke volume. So the amount of blood that leaves our heart per minute. If we've got a stronger heart or a more responsive heart, we can ensure that heart rate doesn't drop. If anything, it gets better. And we can also ensure that our stroke volume increases. If we can increase either one of these, if not both, then we'll see an increase to cardiac output. Ejection fraction, I will leave that to the research. Bradycardia, this is when our heart rate, it drops below 60 beats per minute, okay, when resting. So our heart's got to the size or the strength where it can afford to beat less than 60 times a minute to supply enough oxygenated blood to our body when resting. And then capillarization, we've got more capillaries, more coronary vessels growing and developing around the heart, supplying it with more oxygen. If we can supply the cardiac muscle with more oxygen, then we can ensure that the heart itself is fully fueled, it has enough oxygen to sustain energy, it can work harder for longer. So obviously the glasses are a little bit in the way there, I do apologise. But impact of physical activity on sport, on fitness. So sub-max exercise, this causes the biggest increase in venous return due to the vascular shunt mechanism. So we've got muscular pump occurring. We've got the pocket valves inside of the veins. We've got more blood returning to the heart. Now, what this does is it begins to stretch the heart muscle. So Like we said up at the top here with the glasses, if we can increase the amount of blood going back into the heart, we can gradually stretch these chambers. And over time, if we do this over and over again, the heart gets used to this and it stays in that slightly stretched state, which means that we can get more blood in every time blood returns to the heart. Maximum exercise, on the other hand, because we are contracting muscles, let's say we're doing bicep curls in the gym, and we're completing bicep curls, that bicep is going to contract and expand and place pressure on the nearby blood vessels. The effect of this, or the impact of this, is that we've now got a blood vessel which is being squeezed and it's shrinking down in size, or the amount of blood that's actually allowed to pass through that area. And that that's going to back up. That pressure is going to be felt by the heart. It's going to have to work harder each contraction to try and squeeze the blood through that restricted channel. And in essence, we're applying new stress or new strain onto the heart, and that's going to cause the hypertrophy of those muscle fibers. So over time, the heart becomes far stronger. So we have reached the first time out. So if you are with someone or you want to work by yourself, that's absolutely fine. What I would like to do is answer these 4 questions and then move on to the internet activity, which as I was just mentioning, is linked with the ejection fraction. So what are the 4 components of health? Okay, write down a couple of keywords next to those as well. Using a sporting context for each, explain how sport or physical activity could improve each of these components. Then for the third one, we're looking at cholesterol, which is good, which is bad, and maybe give a little bit of description for both of those. And then for the fourth question, how can we reduce the buildup of cholesterol? What are 2 ways that we can reduce this buildup of cholesterol? And for an extension task, try to explain why cholesterol is bad in the first place. So why is a certain type of cholesterol bad in the first place? Once you've done those 4, research the ejection fraction. Have a little look around. It is to do with stroke volume, I will give you that. And ideally, you need to be looking at how it changes both during exercise and through training. Okay,